Howdy y'all, it's Cody from the Keepers Nerdum. How you doing? It's time for another Necron unit. Let's get into this one. This is actually one of my favorite things that I purchased in a combat patrol box and just blew me away, and then realized it's not entirely a great thing, but yet it's so much fun. What we're talking about today is none other than the Doom Scythe. You know, we'll save the Night Scythe for another video, but let's talk about the Doom Scythe real quick before we get to show some model here for a little bit. You just want to understand something. This is really fascinating. The flyers are right here. Doom Scythe's right there. And according to the book, the Necrons Codex, it is 200 points. It has been dropped drastically from this. It is actually 165 points now. And so that's a massive difference. 35 extra points to go for, you know, potentially 2 Scarab Swarms, you know, to add to another field of them. That's pretty impressive. Now, let's show off the Doom Scythe for just a little bit. It's going to be kind of hard because it is a big boy and we are really close to the camera. So here's what we're going to do. This is the Doom Scythe in all of its glory that I have. We're going to have to like zoom out for a second. Boop, 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 boop. There we go. There's the Doom Scythe that I have created. Put a decent amount of detail in this, and time, effort, and energy. And needless to say, I was really happy with how it turned out. Just a very simple, black, elegant thing. Ironically, the clear coat that I put on did a very interesting pattern of raised bumps, which actually created a very good three-dimensional effect on the ship itself. Just overall, a pure joy to build and to paint. It took a long time, but it was worth every penny of just getting this thing ready. It may also just be dusty, some of it, I'm guessing. But this thing is fantastic. There's the base. I did something really simple of just trying to put a desert that's got wreckage and stuff from old artifacts, probably from humanity. Just something to kind of give a little bit of idea that there's something there, but nothing too elaborate here. And lastly, I did an interesting thing in the inside middle here that is painting it silver, but then also putting some blue tone wash on that just to give it as though there's energy kind of going through these sections. So let's talk about the Doom Scythe. Let's come back to the book, because this is one of those things that I absolutely adore. I actually nicknamed mine because it was such a beautiful, beautiful figure in the game, and realizing that it was just going to be so much fun. So let's talk about only the Doom Scythe, because the Night Scythe has a very different role, and they're made from the same model. Like you have both of the pieces come with this thing, and you just can interchange it out if you set it up right. But also, it's just one of those things that they play very differently. And the reason being is the Doom Scythe is an actual powerhouse, whereas the Night Scythe is, well, it's more support than anything, and that's about it. That's about it. And unfortunately, it has an impact on it. Yeah, we'll talk about the Night Scythe in another video, because it has a very different play style, but yet it's of similar value in a different way. Well, it's really not similar value. I think the Doom Scythe is very much your primary version of this, although the Night Scythe you can make a case, but unfortunately there's another transport that might beat it out. So let's talk about Doom Scythe, all right? So the Doom Scythe starts out with 12 wounds, and this is something very important we just need to establish immediately. It has 12 wounds. Let me get the light a little bit. There we go. Nope. All right, 12 wounds. It has different movements. What's interesting about these movements right here is that it has to always go 20 inches, up to 50, 40, and then 30, depending on its damage. Its weapon skill is terrible. It's not going to be in melee very often, but its ballistic skill starts at 3, goes down to 4, goes down to 5. This is based on the wounds remaining. So this thing is big enough that it actually has wounds remaining, and that's a risky thing. It has 3 attacks for close range at maximum. Leadership, it's always going to pass just because it's only one model. And leadership, or a save of 3+. The 3+ sounds good until you realize it has no invulnerable save of its own, and so unfortunately it gets hit pretty hard. So the weapons, and this is where it really changes, because the Night Scythe has just this, the twin Tesla destructors, these 2 cannons on the side right here of the thing, and it doesn't have the big boy. And whenever you change the model, that's literally what's different on it. But the heavy death ray has a 36-inch range. They both do. This is heavy 3 shots, 3 guaranteed shots, 12 strength, -4 AP. So if they don't have an invuln save, you're going to hammer them hard. And this thing does, when it hits you, 3 damage guaranteed plus a D3. So a minimum 4, maximum of 6. This is nasty. Like these can hit very hard. And if you can ever get 3 of them to actually connect, then you've got something crazy, right? Twin Tesla Destructors, though, these are sad. These are very sad, but yet also really cool. They're interesting. I've used them to great effect too. They're the ones you go, you know what, I'm going to use them, and then they always surprise me. They're heavy 10 shots, 36 range again, 7 strength, so they're still strong, but their AP is 0. Their damage is 1, but here's where things get weird. Each time an attack is made with this weapon, and an unmodified hit roll of 6 scores 2 additional hits. So if you roll just a few 6s, all of a sudden you are hitting like crazy, and there's nothing more fun than buffing this with the +1 to hit, because it's technically core now, even though down here it isn't. They actually added any vehicles are now core as long as they don't have like I think the character keyword. So you could actually buff this with the +1 to hit, and so it's hitting on 2s, which means the heavy death ray is nasty from across the field or even wherever it goes, but also the Twin Tesla Destructors also really nasty. And this thing is disgustingly devastating, but it has a pretty serious downside we'll talk about. So first off, it has living metal. So every turn, on your turn, it heals 1 hit point at least. It does have access to command protocols, the chart. See the Scarab Swarm video to look at those charts a little bit. Now, supersonic is where things get kind of weird. Each time this model makes a normal move, advances or falls back, first pivot it on the spot up to 90 degrees. And so you don't actually have to pivot at any, it's just up to 90 degrees. So you get to pivot up to 90, so you can turn it completely 90 degrees one way or the other, or just 0, because that's still technically a pivot. This does not contribute to how far the model moves. Then move the model straight forwards. It cannot pivot again after the initial pivot. And that's where this 20 to 50 inch range. So at top dial, it can move 50 inches. 50. That's a big part of your board, if not the entirety of the board, if you're just playing a small game. And that's fascinating. So you just have to keep that in mind, though. And the one thing that's weak about this is because it's a flyer and it's a vehicle aircraft stuff, I believe it's the aircraft side. It is visible all the time, even if it itself can't see its target. So you just have to really be careful and mindful of that it is going to be seen and it's going to be shot at. And unfortunately, it doesn't have an invuln save. Now, this thing, when it is destroyed, roll a d6 before removing it from play. On a 6, it explodes, and each unit within 6 inches suffers d3 mortal wounds. It's useful. It's something. This one, though, is very, very good. Each time a ranged attack is made against this unit, subtract 1 from that attack's hit roll. Okay, so hard to hit makes it a little harder to hit, and that's good. The last thing here is the airborne. You cannot declare a charge with this model, and it can only be chosen as target of charge if the unit making the charge can fly. You can only flight. Side note, that means not even hovers can charge this thing. You can only fight with this model if it's within engagement range of any enemy units that can fly. And this model can only make melee attacks against units that can fly. Enemy units can only make melee attacks against this model if they can fly. So basically, unless you're flying, you're not going to melee it. And that's a good thing. The unfortunate thing is, because it can be seen from everywhere, it has the unfortunate propensity to get hit very, very hard, very, very fast by some serious, heavy weapons, because they can just see it. And as long as they have the range, which a lot of them have 48, 72 kind of deals, they're going to target it and whatnot. And so at first you're like, well, 36 isn't very good range, but the fact that it can move 20 inches minimum, right? It has to move 20 inches minimum means it's always going to be accessing the place to get a shot off, as long as you're just planning it semi-decently, right? And that's the reality, is it's always going to be pretty good for that. Now, if memory serves, there's a few good stratagems for this thing, if I can find them. Wheel? Maybe. There we go. Nope, stratagems are gone. Oh no. So Mephrit really, just as a side note for dynastic codes, Mephrit is fantastic for this thing. 3 inches to the range, so it's 36 to 39 inches, which just helps a little bit. And if they're within half, then you get to improve AP on the guns by -1. So all of a sudden your Teslas could have -1 AP, which is really cool. And then you could actually get both parts of the Vengeful Stars, which is really interesting because Vengeful Stars actually gives you a rather interesting ability of, let's see real quick, command protocols, there we go. Let's see, Vengeful Stars. I really like using this, and it's fantastic because both of them are Directive 1. Each time a model in this unit makes a ranged attack, an unmodified wound roll of 6 improves the AP of that attack by 1. So technically its big guns could have a -6 AP. And then Directive 2, each time a model in this unit makes a ranged attack that targets a unit within half range, the target does not receive the benefits of cover to its saving throw against that attack. Fantastic. Now, therein lies an interesting challenge because it's like, that's some really cool stuff. And if I can find it really quickly, this is a fascinating stratagem for it, because it does, as it takes damage, it gets weaker. But thankfully, if memory serves, there is a stratagem for this thing to help it become as though it's still back to its original. There's one I wanted to talk about as well. I apologize. I'm looking really quick. Where is it? No. Okay, so first off, let's talk about this one real quick. Curse of the Pharaon, 3 CPs or 1 CP. Use this stratagem in any phase when a Necron vehicle model from your army is destroyed. Do not roll to see if that model explodes. It does so automatically. If that model has the Titanic keyword, the stratagem costs 3 CPs. Otherwise, it costs 1. Unfortunately, yeah, he does explode, so you could actually make him blow up on top of someone, which is really cool. There we go. Found it. All right. So it's atavistic instigation. Use this stratagem in your shooting phase. When a Doom Scythe model from your army is selected to shoot, after you select the target unit for that model's heavy death ray, select one enemy unit within 3 inches of that target. You can select the target itself if you wish. That unit can either brace or duck for cover. If that unit braces and it's not a vehicle or monster, it suffers D3 mortal wounds. If that unit ducks for cover, then until the end of the turn, subtract 1 from the attack characteristics of the model in that unit, and that unit cannot fire Overwatch or set to defend. Something kind of simple that you can just mess with your opponent. And lastly, I know it's in here somewhere, and I cannot find it, and that's okay, but I don't know. That's really obnoxious that I cannot figure out where that's at. I apologize, but at the very least, we got Malevolent Arcing. Use this stratagem in your shooting phase when a Necron model from your army targets an enemy unit with a Tesla weapon, and so it does have 10 Teslas. After making that weapon's attacks, roll 1d6 for each other unit within 6 inches of that enemy unit. On a 4+, the unit being rolled for suffers 1 mortal wound. And it's really simple. It doesn't sound like a lot, but 1 extra mortal wound can have some interesting implications. Unfortunately, if you're playing Mephrit, you could get the ability to get an extra 3 mortal wounds based on some 6s that you roll for the 2 wound, I do believe. And so it's just hard to, I don't know, it's just really hard to figure out which way to go with this. And so what you've got is some interesting problems of what do we do here. And that's the last one we'll share tonight, is this Talent for Annihilation, 1 CP from Mephrit. In your shooting phase, when a Mephrit unit from your army is selected to shoot until the end of the phase, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, an unmodified wound roll 6 inflicts 1 mortal wound on the target in addition to any normal damage. Maximum of 3 mortal wounds can be inflicted per phase via the stratagem. And that could apply to all of its weapons, which is 13 attacks. And in first turn, if you don't have other stuff in range, this could actually be viable. Normally, you wouldn't do it on this particular vehicle, but it does have that interesting ability to give you some fantastic, I don't know, it's just crazy. So I found it finally. Here's the last one, sorry. We got to talk about Stellar Alignment Protocol, 2 CPs or 1 CP. Use this stratagem in the command phase. Select 1 Necron's vehicle model from your army that has a wounds characteristic of 10 or more. Until the start of your next command phase, that model is considered to have its full wounds remaining for the purposes of determining what characteristics on its profile to use. If the model has Titanic keyword, its stratagem costs 2 instead of 1. So one of the interesting things is, because it doesn't have an invuln save, it's really easy for these 12 wounds to all of a sudden be lost in 1 turn, especially if all the heavy weapons get turned on it, because they can see it, not necessarily everything else. So it can die really easily. It does subtract 1 from their attack roll, but this is just the risk you run with this thing. I've had a lot of fun with it, but whenever you get into the heavier weapons stuff that shows up on the field, you get squished pretty hard. And he's a fantastic piece. And that last stratagem can help you go, okay, you know what? He's down in the very last thing and he's not going to hit anything. I'm going to activate this to give him back to +3 to hit, have my weapons ready to go that are actually usable instead of trying to hit on a 5+, because you really don't want heavy 3s on a 5+, because missing those hurts badly. And even just one more turn of the opportunity even matters. So let me know, have you played a Doom Scythe? The other thing that's really important too to note is it can never secure objectives for you. And so when it's flying around, it's doing a lot of damage, and the unfortunate thing is it can never capture the objectives. So therein lies the risk that you run. Now, I've been Cody from the Keeper's Nerdum. Let me know down in the comments below if you've played a Doom Scythe, what you like about it, what you dislike about it. But I think overall it's a fantastic piece to mess around and harass your opponent and just have an absolute blast flying around the board. And so when you get units like this in Warhammer 40k, they're hilarious antics, but they're also pretty dangerous too, gameplay-wise, if you're not careful. But I've been Cody from Keeper's Nerdum. Take care.